Hello, everybody, and welcome to the season finale of your Bish Therapist podcast. I am your host, Melissa Reich, your Bish Therapist, a real life therapist serving hot takes and clinical interpretations on all things pop culture. So, for those of you who didn't see my most recent podcast or didn't listen to it, I made a little announcement that your Bish needs a break. I had started this podcast in, June of this year. And for those of you who want to listen to that podcast, you can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts. I, started this whole thing in June and I had no idea or expectations what this would turn into. And, I just decided that I needed a little break. So I am going to do seasons of your Bish Therapist. So what is going to happen is this is going to be the season finale episode. And my goodness, it is going to be a banger. I have 18 pages of notes, folks. So it's going to be a long one. So buckle up. So I'm really going to go out with a bang. And then my plan is to, come back mid-January. So I'm going to take off December, first 2 weeks of January, and then come back in January and give you some fresh content. I also have some really cool plans to have some professionals on the show, some therapists who focus on eating disorders and sex addiction and things like that. So I am really excited about season 2. But for now, this is the season finale of season 1. And this will be, I believe, the 18th episode. So season 1, for those of you who are sad or you're going to miss your Bish, there are plenty of episodes to listen to on the podcast. I have all of the video up on my YouTube channel. So my YouTube channel is Your Bish Therapist. And you could also try searching Melissa Reich, but I think it's just under Your Bish Therapist. That's the name of the channel. Please follow my Instagram, Your Bish Therapist on Instagram. And please follow the podcast. Please like and subscribe to my YouTube. I would just greatly appreciate it. And for those of you who have enjoyed all these episodes, please head on over to wherever you listen to podcast and give a 5-star rating. I would greatly appreciate that. So today's episode, this is going to be so long. I mean, it might end up being like an hour and a half, 2 hours. I have no idea. I'm just going to talk until I can't talk anymore. Today's episode, I'm going to talk about the Twin Flames universe. Now, for those of you who didn't watch the Twin Flames on Netflix or on Amazon Prime, don't worry, because I sincerely have 18 pages of notes. So there's a lot of information that I took in for all of this. I watched Amazon Prime. So there was it's called Desperately Seeking Soulmate on Amazon Prime, about the Twin Flames universe. It's called Escaping Twin Flames on Netflix. Then there was a podcast on Wondery about twin flames. Then there were several articles. One was Inside the Always Online, All-Consuming World of Twin Flames Universe by Alice Hines, and that was released December 3rd, 2020. And now Alice Hines is a journalist who is featured in a lot of this information. So I'm going to talk a little bit about her. There's another article called This YouTube School Promised True Love. Students say they got exploited instead. That was a Vice article on February 5th, 2020. And then the final article is How Twin Flames Universe YouTubers Monetized Heartbreak and Trauma. Vice article 11/9/2023. So that one was very recent. So I sincerely watched all the content, listened to all the content, wrote down all of it, and I'm going to synthesize it and share it here with you all. So I do ask that you give me some grace. This is a lot of information, and I'm really going to try to share it and do my best in a very organized, appropriate manner. The thing that people have come to really enjoy about this podcast is, this is my signature, right? I do signature deep dives. I really do like graduate level homework. And so, and in fairness, this is the reason I need a break, right? Because this took all week. It was Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to those who celebrate. I'm sure all of us are full and tired. And personally, I love Thanksgiving food. So I got a little bit of that going on, and it's a lot of information. So I'm going to start out by sharing a trigger warning, because what I'm going to talk about in this twin flames universe, it's very heavy, intense content. So this episode contains discussion of cults, abuse in every way, religious and spiritual, emotional, verbal, and sexual, coercion around sexual orientation and gender identity / gender expression, discussion of gender dysphoria and trauma. This episode features direct quotes from victims and perpetrators, so listener discretion is advised. It's just really, really heavy content. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by sharing a little bit about what is a twin flame. For those of you who didn't get to watch, don't worry, I watched it all for you. So this obviously does contain spoilers. I mean, it's literally a play-by-play of the documentaries and things like that. So if you want to watch, go ahead, watch, and then come back and listen to this. Or if you don't want to watch, and I will give you all the information that you need to know right here. So honestly, here's the thing, the last thing I'm going to say before I get into it, because we do just need to get into it. So my goal here, as a content creator, I do have to be mindful about how I speak about things. But I'm going to be very honest. Watching this was very triggering for me and ignited a lot of anger for pretty much the simple fact that those who know me and who know this podcast know that I am a fierce advocate and an ally for marginalized groups, the LGBTQ, plus population, people with mental health issues, people with physical health issues. I'm just an advocate and an ally in every way, shape, and form, truly. And so watching this, it made me feel sincere rage to the point of sometimes when I get mad and frustrated, I say things that I shouldn't say. So I really have to be mindful about how I talk about this whole thing, because it's insanity. I mean, it's literal insanity. So buckle up, buttercups. Here we go. So let's start out by talking about what is a twin flame. A twin flame is a new age concept that describes a certain intense connection between two individuals who are supposedly two halves of one whole. And so this concept defies time and space. So essentially it's saying that these are soulmates who have known each other in other lifetimes and, things of that nature. And so these people, Jeff and Shaleia, well, I think they call themselves now Jeff and Shaleia Divine, but their real name is Jeff and Shaleia Ayan. Ayan. So I'm going to talk about who they are and essentially how they took this twin flame concept and co-opted it, made it their own, and then morphed it to essentially control and manipulate other people. By the end of this podcast, people wonder, is this a cult? I'm going to let you decide that for yourself. I'm going to talk about cults. I'm going to talk about how do people get sucked into cults? What are the tactics that cults use to, kind of get people who are just really smart? And, that was people's main question when I asked for questions about this, because I knew I was going to do the podcast, and people's main question was how. How does this happen to people who are intelligent, wonderful people? So I'm going to answer that question. I'm going to tell you who these people are, what it is that they're doing. I'm going to talk about cults. I'm going to talk about different types of cults and how people get sucked into those. And I'm going to let you all make your decision about that piece of it. So I'm going to start by defining what a cult is, so that I'm going to talk about a couple of terms. Okay. So because this episode, it's so nuanced and complex what these two leaders have done to this community. It's so nuanced, and there's so much, and a lot of it involves sexual orientation and gender identity and expression. This is one of the major cults that I've become aware of that used their manipulation tactics to coerce people to convert into essentially a different gender identity or a different sexual orientation than they had previously experienced. So, as an ally and an advocate, one thing I want to say is that I am a huge advocate for the trans community, and I am going to discuss this with respect and dignity and education, because there are some concepts of like sex and gender, and people get a little bit confused. So first, I'm going to start out by talking about the definition of a cult. There's a couple definitions. So the first definition is it's a pejorative term for a small group of people led by a charismatic and self-appointed, that's important, always charismatic and self-appointed leader who excessively controls its members, requiring unwavering devotion to a set of beliefs and practices which are considered outside the norms of society. Okay. It can also be a religious group that is not part of a larger or more accepted religion that has beliefs regarded by many people as dangerous or extreme. A relatively small group of people having religious beliefs or practices regarded by others as strange or sinister. And another definition is a misplaced or excessive admiration for a particular person or thing. So that is essentially the definition of a cult. Now, later, I'm going to talk about different types and things like that, but I want to first get into who Jeff and Shaleia are, and kind of give a little bit of background before I go into all that. So I also do want to talk about the concept of twin flame for a minute, that these people based this whole, well, now they're calling it a religion. Before it wasn't a religion, now it's a religion. So the whole twin flame concept, here is for me why that feels absurd is there's something I'm going to explain. There's a concept called genetic sexual attraction. Okay. So twin flame, the whole thing that these people hung their hat on with the twin flame is like, if you meet someone and you feel like this immediate spark or connection, or you feel like immediate attraction or just like some sort of spark, right? A lot of us have experienced that. And so what these people say is if you experience that, that means that person is your twin flame. And in their world, your twin flame is that's your only person for your whole life. That's your only lover, your only significant other. And here's why I feel this concept is just absurd. Okay. So there's something called genetic sexual attraction, which is a phenomenon of intense attraction between biological family members that can occur after relatives are united after a long period of separation. So this can affect family members separated at birth or in early childhood. There is a biological component to this where we become attracted to people who have our same genetic composition. And it's a very real thing. And so why do I share this? The point is that our brains do strange things sometimes, and we cannot trust and dive in headfirst to every initial impulse we have. That would be an absolute disaster. It just would. And, here's the thing. The terms twin flame and twin flame universe and twin flame. So Jeff and Shaleia use this term twin flame harmonious union. When you meet your twin flame and you're in this harmonious, happy union for the rest of your lives. Here's what I'm going to say about that. I've been with my husband for 22 going on 23 years. So ironically, I am in technically a harmonious twin flame union. And I think that the concept is absurd. It is absolutely absurd. Here's why. A relationship that has spanned multiple decades is not always harmonious. Conflict is a necessary part of relationships, whether people like it or not, to grow and to learn individually as a couple. Conflict looks different for all couples. I'm not talking about screaming, yelling, inappropriate. I'm talking about appropriate levels of conflict. So relationships are meant to have conflict. And so if someone is trying to promise you that you will find your one person and you're going to be happy forever, that is bullshit. It is complete bullshit. I love my husband and we are very happy, but I think it's just an absurd concept. A and B, monogamy is not for everybody. For me and my husband, we love each other. I do believe we're soulmates. We're very happy. But monogamy is not for everybody. So, that's another piece. I feel there are going to be a lot of themes of heteronormative kind of ideals or things like that. So heteronormative meaning like, this is, what straight people do. This is how it is. There's a man and a woman and it's for, forever and all these things. And that's that's not always the case for folks. So let me start by talking about who are Jeff and Shaleia. Okay. So Jeff was born Jeff Ayan, again, Ayan. He was raised in a small town in Lapeer, Michigan. I am also from the Midwest, and normally people from the Midwest are amazing, but they, really missed with this guy, with this Jeff. So they interviewed. I'm going to talk about at a point the two documentaries about this. They interviewed friends and family of Jeff and Shaleia. And so I'm going to be integrating that also into this. They interviewed specifically Shaleia's dad, and he had some very interesting things to say. They interviewed some of Jeff's previous girlfriends and friends that he lived with, and they had a lot of really wild things to say. So the thing about Jeff that is really important to know is that he was always described as charismatic, funny, and financially motivated. And to me, that is the seedling for a cult leader, right? Charismatic, funny, and super financially motivated. Those are characteristics that you will see among all cult leaders across history. People like Ted Bundy was a serial killer, but people always talked about how he got away with it for so long because he was, handsome, he was charismatic, he was funny, he, all these things. So he was disarming. So Jeff gets a college degree in business, and here's why this is going to be really important. So the education that this man has is a undergraduate degree in business. Okay. Keep this in mind. So he graduates business school, and moves to Hawaii in 2002. And he starts a travel blog and life and career coaching. Okay, let me. So Jeff is young. Okay, he has no life experience, but he feels that he has so much to share despite having zero qualifications, which tells me he always believed he knows more and better than other people, but he has nothing to back it up. That's this whole guy's shtick is I am this, this, and this, but no credentials, absolutely nothing to back it up. That's just seems like who this person was. So he moved to Hawaii. He started this blog called Ender's Adventures. He joked about starting a cult. So the other thing that I need to add that unfortunately people listening to this and watching this don't, you should watch the documentary, is they literally show all of this information that I got was from Jeff and Shaleia's own mouths, because they, like most other leaders, have thousands of hours of video that they taped and recorded, and that was the documentary. So the documentary, to be clear, is not just previous members making claims. These two leaders are saying things and doing things that I can observe, and that is how I'm basing my my clinical interpretations. I'm not just taking, first of all, believe victims. Okay. I believe these victims, they deserve respect and dignity. But my point is that if someone listens to this and says, well, you don't know, and, these people, they're disgruntled. Nope. I watched it and I listened to it with my own eyes and my own ears. So all of this that I'm saying comes from my brain of watching them in these videos, because there are so many Twin Flames Universe videos. Just it's on YouTube. Just Google it. They have private Facebook group. They have all these other things. So it's wild. So he had to move back home to his parents' home after Hawaii because he was not successful. And there was some sort of issue between he and his parents, and he had to move out and stay with a friend. And I'm going to talk about that in just a second. This is what I'm about to say brings me so much rage, I cannot even tell you. So when he was living with a friend, so essentially he was homeless, living with a friend, trying to, get his grift to stick. And he started a website that claimed that he could cure cancer. As a 2-time cancer survivor, the rage that incites in me, I honestly cannot even explain it. I cannot even express the rage. For somebody to claim that they can cure cancer is fucking bullshit. Pardon my language, but when I'm really mad, I really curse. It is absolute bullshit. Cancer is a formidable force, and to take advantage of people by saying, if you pay me this, I can cure this, is insanity. It is a grift. It is manipulation. It should be criminal. Truly, it should be criminal, because unfortunately there are some people who will be so desperate that I'm sure they paid him or fell for it or whatever. If you see a person that says that they can cure this or that, and they're not, they have zero credentials, they're a grifter. They are a grifter. That is insanity. My God, that makes me so angry. And the other interesting thing about him is he studied neuro-linguistic programming, which is a form of hypnosis, because this guy's whole life is just, how can I get rich? How can I get rich? How can I get rich? I have direct quotes from him. So stay tuned for those. If for those of you who are like, oh, she's being hard on him, or oh, whatever, wait until I read you some of these direct quotes. And yes, I listened to all these things. I paused it and I literally typed out direct quotes from this man's mouth. Okay. The insanity that people like this can just, take advantage of people. It just enrages me. My God. Okay. So let's move to his counterpart, Shaleia, who her real name is Megan Plant. She was born Megan Plant. She was raised Catholic. Parents divorced at 10. Mom died from cancer when she was 15. So here's what makes me crazy, number one. And number two, people are like, Shalea's a victim. No, she's not. And I'll tell you why. Her mother died from cancer, and she is aligning herself to be with her twin flame, her partner, who is claiming that he is God and he can cure cancer. You're a grifter too, bro, because that is insane. Your mother dies of cancer and you're going to marry and like practice a grift with some guy who says he can cure these things. I mean, of course, here's the thing. They got smarter about it after these documentaries came out. They have closed their Facebook groups. They have deleted videos. But if you watch these documentaries, you will have access to all of these videos. Okay. So that is insanity. Her mother dies from cancer, and now she's with a man who's just, a con man. So when she met Jeff, she was looking, her dad talked about this. He was interviewed. She was looking for the other side of herself when she met Jeff. She taught him about the twin flame concept. He latched onto it, and they made it the center of their universe. Because let's not forget, up until this point, he had tried a couple of different things. Oh, and by the way, he had a couple of different names, like all good grifters and con men do. Anyone who that's like a sign if someone is like consistently like changing their name or having different names. So Jeff Ayan, he has also been Jeffrey Ionethos, Ender Ionethos, Shafira Ionethos, and now Jeffrey Divine or whatever. And Shaleia's name came from a conscious meditation that helped her find her new name, because I guess Megan, doesn't sound very spiritual. And so, to me, that's a huge red flag. So you're spiritual, to be a spiritual leader, you need to have a different identity. Well, that's a real problem if you ask me. Okay. So now I'm going to share the origin story from them. So how it began. I'm going to share a little bit of some timelines of events. Okay. So here's what's wild. They talked about their origin story, and so literally here's how their relationship started, these very spiritual beings. Shaleia. Okay, so she calls herself Shaleia, so I'm not going to weaponize that name. I didn't mean to do that on purpose. So I'm going to call them the names that they want to be called, despite the fact that I do not respect them at all. That's just, basic human decency. So Shaleia messaged Jeff, "You horny?" That's what she messaged him. This is how they met. Wow, what a love story. What a love story. You horny? Okay. And then as soon as they met, they began making videos together because they felt like they were soulmates, which, like, here's the thing about the internet is anyone can make a video about anything and say anything about anything. Okay. That somehow these videos, people started to latch onto them and they became very popular, which is, I'm going to talk about how that happened. But so in 2016, they married, and I think they had dated for 2 years. They moved to Michigan, where he started that website claiming he could cure cancer. Oh, and other health issues. Mm-hmm. So this was the precursor to Twin Flames Union. And then the timeline is in 2016, the Twin Flames Union Facebook group had about 70 people. And in 2020, the group led to 14,000. And currently it's at about 40,000 members, which is horrifying. And it also proves that the ignorant voices are the loudest. It's like, there are great content creators out there, myself included. And it's like, it does always seem to be this pattern of like, the ignorant voices just get like the most, and uneducated, they get the most attention. They get the most, I don't know. It's terrible. So like I said, the difference is now they're still recruiting people and recruiting. So by the way, if there's like a recruiting thing for your group, I mean, that also is a huge red flag to me. That doesn't make a lot of sense. If you're spiritual and everything is above board, why are you recruiting people? People should be coming to you. I don't know. It's just so bizarre. So now they're more careful. Their groups are private, no more public recordings, and they just learn. I believe that Jeff and Shaleia are so narcissistic that they just believed that whatever came out of their mouths, everybody would love. Everybody would love it. Everybody would support it. They literally never considered that people would think that they're cult leaders or, inappropriate, abusive, all these things. And that takes some real deep narcissism to think that you're just going to say the wackiest, most wild shit on video and people are going to be like, oh, these guys are great. Yikes. So the other interesting thing that there was some, Jeff said, there was a video snippet of him saying that in 2014, he found Shaleia living in a garage in Sedona and riding a bike to work. So that doesn't jive with me either. So he originally said that they met on the internet, and I guess maybe they did, and then he went to find, I don't know how that worked. The thing about people who lie a lot is you can't believe anything that they say. So, for what that's worth. But he used that so as like, they would have these twin flame union meetings. Well, they eventually started calling it was a twin flame ascension school. Keep in mind too, people who are cult leaders or just really shady, they will use like spiritual nonsense words. Like they'll just mush them up all together to make something seem like really valid. So Twin Flame Ascension School, which just means nothing, but they started it in 2016, and so they got married, and the website that claimed to cure cancer wasn't making him enough money. So then he started this Twin Flame Ascension School, which, surprise, surprise, it was super expensive. And they have no credentials. There are no credentials of these people for doing the work that they're doing. I have credentials that I could do this, but I wouldn't because I'm not an abusive person who's trying to take advantage of people. So that's what I think is the most bizarre. So they had their first Twin Flame Ascension School meeting. So far, there have been 3 in-person meetups of this Twin Flame Ascension School. So the first one was December 30th of 2018 in New York City. And here's what's interesting. That Twin Flame meetup was originally, there were certain members of the group who I'm going to talk about in a bit, who were getting together because the one major thing here that we're going to see continuously is that Jeff and Shaleia, they built this community and they use it to get other people, like to dig their claws into people, because this community is filled with wonderful folks who are just seekers and looking for things. And so a couple of members were going to New York to get together, and Jeff and Shaleia saw an opportunity to grift, and they did. So they kind of took over that, and they made it their first Twin Flame Ascension School meetup. Of course, they wanted to take the opportunity to charge people more money to make money. So they thought, okay, well, let's co-opt this meet and let's do this. Then July 27th, 2019, there was a second gathering of Twin Flames Union in Toronto. And then October 8th, 2021, there was a third in-person gathering of Twin Flames Union in Arizona. And so here's what's interesting. In that third in-person gathering in Arizona in 2021, Jeff bragged about, so Jeff brags a lot about material stuff, like all spiritual people do, like Mary Cosby, that spiritual leader who, is a grifter and just loves materialistic stuff and loves to be rude to people, which is why I can't watch Salt Lake City, because this also is, Mary Cosby is like very similar. Which irritates the heck out of me. But so Jeff talked about in this in-person gathering, he says, I found Shaleia living in a garage in Sedona and riding a bike to work in 2014. And now she's decked out in Chanel. Ugh. And it's like, here's the other thing. If these leaders, if you're in a group, okay, and leaders of the group are like bragging about how your money that you're paying them is going towards like designer goods, you should have a feeling about that. That's insanity. Whatever. So that was kind of the timeline of that. Now let me get into some of their businesses and what exactly they had promised people, because it's a whole wild thing. Okay, sorry, I have so many notes here. My God, flipping. Okay, so Jeff and Shaleia, with this whole twin flame thing, they took their business, and in 2020 they turned it into a church because they didn't want to pay taxes. They asked one of their members, who of course they all of their members, they expected them to be free labor for them. Check. Yes, of course, that makes sense. So their Church of Union first Sunday service was on January 5th, 2020. And so now they're considered a church. And this is what I had done another podcast episode where I talk about how sometimes churches are tax exempt, not sometimes, churches are tax exempt. So people who want to make money and not have to pay taxes or pay less taxes, will turn whatever they're doing into a church. Mary Cosby, it was already a church, but I talked about that, how the tax exempt service definitely benefited her and her husband. And so a member of the community of Twin Flames Union was asked to figure out how to get them to pay less taxes. And so, of course, they turned it into a church. So prior to 2020, it was more spiritual based. It wasn't so much about God. And then in 2020, of course, they had to change their behaviors to match the grift. And so they became more God-centered. And this is where Jeff, holy moly, this is where Jeff started to talk about that the image of Jesus was actually him. Mm-hmm. So Jeff from Michigan claims that he says, those images of me, not a Jewish guy from Israel. The image of Christ is actually me, the second coming, not Jesus, the first coming. And then Shaleia says, I'm banging Christ. How spiritual and religious of them. That is just the most absurd. And again, it's like they're just saying this in front of people, like no qualms about it, no concerns. Like that is bananas. If you are in a group and the group leader is trying to tell you that they are Jesus or God, or as Mary Cosby would say, a facsimile of God, which means an exact copy, they are grifters. That is insanity to claim that. Can you imagine the narcissism that takes to be like, I am him, he is me? It's just so insane. I just can't. So the church then became their nonprofit business, but they have all these for-profit businesses under that. So it really is like a multi-level marketing scheme that they have set up. And they are the beneficiary of all of it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what exactly their businesses were under that. So one thing that they had, and again, this really angers me as a clinician who is trained, and I respect the process so much. So they co-opted this process called the mind alignment process, MAP for short. And what is frustrating to me is they used certain members who had good credentials or facades. So it was MAP processes led by Dr. Chrissy K, PhD. So she was a member of the military. I don't know if she still is or not. And she really has her PhD. I'm not sure in what, but they utilized her as the face of this mind alignment process, which is supposedly used to get to the root of PTSD and heal. And she was trying to apply for grants through the military. Like they were trying to make fetch happen. For those who know what that reference is, that's a Mean Girls reference. Jeff and Shaleia just like continually are just trying to make fetch happen. And it's like, can you just stop making fetch trying to be a thing? So the whole part of this process is it's this pseudo psychology, very damaging, very intense process that is not these processes that are really used to get to the root of PTSD. I'm going to talk about an example, EMDR. EMDR is a series of rapid eye movements to desensitize your trauma, and it is very effective. But guess what? It has been studied. There were trials. There are scientific backing for the EMDR process. You have to be trained. You have to be, and it's an expensive process. So essentially what Jeff and Shaleia were doing was they're promising these things that will help people and that will find them their twin flame and get rid of their trauma. And all of it is a grift. All of it. Nothing is real. It's just all a complete sham. In fact, one of the members claimed that they tried to plant memories of sexual trauma in her mind. And here, I believe her 1,000%. Her name is Elle. She claimed that through this process, mind alignment process, she had memories of sexual abuse planted in her mind, that she was close with her parents. She never experienced any sexual abuse. But after these MAP sessions, they tried to convince her of that. And here's why. Because when people get well and they move on, Jeff and Shaleia don't make money. So they need people to continue to be really sick and unhappy and unwell so that they can just cha-ching, 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 cha-ching. Okay. The one thing also that I'm going to say that literally brought me nothing but rage is that they went into PTSD groups on Facebook to troll for clients, and the coaches were told to tell people that it would heal them. These two people should be in jail. That is the most absurd concept that I have. I mean, it's you're trolling for victims. You're literally trolling for victims. And these people, I have PTSD. I have chronic PTSD. In the throes of it, if someone would have promised me, whatever, I'm not sure that I would have believed it, but I might have been desperate enough to try it because PTSD and trauma is a nightmare. It's so challenging to deal with. And there were, by the way, Jeff in one of the videos said, and I quote, "Let's license this to the military, then I'll be a billionaire." So does that sound like someone who wants to be a billionaire or sound like somebody who wants to help people? Yeah. Okay. So mind alignment process, that was one grift. Then another grift was divine dish. And here is what is so weird about this divine dish. So the theme of this was cook and eat your way to harmonious twin flame union and a wild, passionate sex lie right here. Food for God consciousness. Oh my God, what a bag of bullshit. So listen, what we put in our bodies is important, but wait until you hear what this divine dish was. It was, of course, $100 monthly fee, and you had to buy all the ingredients yourself. So I'm not sure what, I guess, and then you follow the recipe. So you pay $100 for a month and you have to buy your own groceries, which is going to be, a couple $100, and then follow their recipes. So the $100 recipes that you're paying for was carb-based red meat. You have to eat all your food. And in pretty much all of the members, it led to rapid weight gain and health problems. This whole divine dish nonsense is literally meant to control people. It's like with livestock, you want to keep them fed, docile, and that is literally what they're doing to humans. And so I saw some of the dishes too. So first of all, the recipes, they were like wraps and sandwiches. So I don't know that you need to pay $100 for a recipe of how to make a sandwich, but it was disgusting. It was disgusting food. It looked disgusting. And here's the thing. You eat what you want, but red meat is like one of the things that is actually like proven to cause cancer. So again, it just really seems like they really wanted to keep their folks sick and unwell so that they could continue to, get money from them. I mean, that's period. That's it. And Jeff, in one video where he talked about this, by the way, he talks about how he says, and I quote, "I was afraid I wouldn't love her if she gained weight," talking about Shaleia. What a guy. I was afraid I wouldn't love her if she gained weight. Oh my God. And then he says, "But it's been great. It's been, I love her extra weight." It's just so, oh my God. It makes my brain hurt. It really does. And then they had other businesses like, of course, card readings, meditations, card readings. They had something called Divine Music, which I'm pretty sure Jeff didn't invent music. He's certainly not a musician, so I don't know. And Divine Gaming. Divine Gaming. I don't know. It's so funny. Okay. Oh, one of their other things. So after all of this, hold on, let me look if there was something else. No. So after all of this, they also they called it life purpose class. Okay. So the process would be that they would recruit people and they would make those people certified ascension coaches. Okay. So, and then it became like a multi-level marketing scheme so they had a coach and then they would recruit people and then those people would be coaches and they would recruit people. I mean, literally it's a multi-level marketing, kind of, basis. And, in my opinion, it looks like they got greedy and they were like, well, that's not enough now. We need to do these life purpose classes, which led to asking every single member to provide free labor. And so Jeff and Shaleia built a legitimate hierarchy of a business, legitimate CEOs, of course not CFOs because the financial stuff was only them, but social media people, CEOs of the program and things like that. And so they had this legit hierarchy business, but everyone was working for free because not only were they working for free, they had to pay, I think it was like $7,000 to become like, to get all of their credentialing, like the coach credentialing and everything. They had to spend like $7,000 to $10,000 on all of these classes. And then when that didn't make them enough money, then it led to, well, you're part of a life purpose class. So you're going to be our free interns. We're going to teach you how to live a righteous life. And you're just going to do all this stuff for free. And if that's not, so that is definitely taking advantage of people. What I will say is that, I did an internship. Most people, if you're a professional, you've done internships. I had to do internships when I was in grad school and things like that. But this is completely different. This is exploitation at its finest. These are people who are having to pay for the pleasure of working for free for these people. It is complete insanity. And the most recent thing that Jeff said he wanted to do was build a commune. Well, he didn't call it a commune. That's, I'm using that term. So a $4 million plot of land that they plan to build a quote unquote church on. Everyone is to live in a trailer on the property, have golden children who will be twin flames with other golden children. Members will serve as surrogate/sperm donors decided by Jeff and Shaleia, of course. And Jeff and Shaleia can decide if they're worthy of a child based on $10,000 income per month. Mm-hmm. Yep. Everything that I'm saying, that is correct. Yep. So they're literally trying to create their own, it sounds like they're trying to create their own society, which is extraordinarily dangerous and also so narcissistic. Like, it's like you think that you are going to produce this, I don't even know. I'm sorry. I'm at a loss for words, because I'm so frustrated about this. Okay, and then the last thing I'm going to say is going back to the divine dish. So one of the things that I am going to talk about when they interviewed one of Jeff's friends who they lived with before, doing this whole twin flame stuff. In fact, this gentleman, let me find his name. Eric Rogers, was his name. He was a childhood best friend of Jeff. Jeff and Shaleia lived with him for a period of time, and he had to ask them to leave after he found out that Jeff had put up that website talking about curing people with cancer. So as Eric Rogers is a good dude, a good, way to go, man. He was like, you can't live here if that's what you're going to be doing, because this is insanity. And so then Jeff and Shaleia moved out. But one of the interesting tidbits that he shared is that he observed that Jeff and Shaleia ate hot dogs for every meal. And I was like, what? And he's like, I know that sounds crazy, but literally breakfast, lunch, and dinner, they would eat hot dogs. And I'm like, okay, so these people are trying to give nutrition advice while they're eating the one food that is actually proven to cause cancer. Again, there's some connection there, right? If you want to cure people's cancer, you want to take their money, then you probably would want to make them sick, right? So, but it's just the point of ridiculousn's that it's like, so you're going to eat hot dogs for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then you're going to come up with this divine dish nonsense. Like, it's so insane. Okay. So now I'm going to get into the first documentary that I watched, which was Escaping Twin Flames on Netflix. So that was the first documentary that I watched. So I'm going to share the stories of victims because I think that's really special and important. I'm going to talk about, there were several people featured, and I'm going to share their name and their story and what they claimed happened. So in the first documentary, Stephanie is a current member of Twin Flames, but her mother, Louise, and her twin sister, Paula, identical twin sister, by the way, participated in the documentary. And if Louise and Paula are listening to this, you are rock stars. I adore you. You are doing your best. And I just give you both so much credit. It was heartbreaking to watch them talk about losing their child and twin sister to this twin flame universe. And the saddest thing of all was when Paula, the twin sister, said she has a twin flame. It's me. But, they talked about, the process of losing this child. So they share their grief of being excommunicated. And so I'm going to share also what was going on for people before they join this group, because it's going to help you get a clear picture of like, how do people get sucked into this, right? So Stephanie met someone in the Peace Corps, felt an immediate attraction, but he was not interested in her. She Googled Twin Flame, and then Twin Flame Universe popped up, leading her to find this group. That is going to be a consistent theme that you're going to hear. People who had met someone, they felt a spark, or they had a life tragedy, they were looking for a purpose. So all of these people were seekers. They were looking for something, they were feeling like they were missing something, and then boom, they found Twin Flames Universe. So there was Sarah claims that Jeff convinced Stephanie. So Sarah's another member. I'm sorry. So Sarah is a member that also, she's a previous member. The people that participated in this documentary, they were either previous members or family members of members who were currently there. So Sarah claims there was this concept of a soul family, which was introduced, which served to just alienate members from their family. Because if members are alienated from their family, they're going to really need your support in your community. So that's a tactic. But Sarah claims that Jeff convinced Stephanie that she was being abused and encouraged her to send a goodbye letter to her family, which she did, and she never talked to them again. Which is just sick and disgusting. Anyone who wants to alienate people from family, that's a red flag. As a therapist, I have worked with many people who have had family dysfunction and family issues, and some people needed to stop communicating with them. But guess what? That's never a me decision. As a therapist, I'm a guide. I'm a guide to help people figure out what they want and how to get there. And I am not somebody who decides that for them. If you are looking for someone who's saying, I know what's best for you and I'm going to decide this for you, like Jeff and Shaleia, run in the other direction. Nobody, and I mean nobody, knows what's best for you other than you. Doctors, spiritual leaders, whoever. We are the masters of our soul. We are perhaps master was not a good word. We are the only people who know us best, truly. So, just, wanted to say that. So the letter was shared. The mother, Louise, and the twin sister, Paula, they shared the letter, and it was just full of brainwashed wording, So the other interesting thing is that Jeff sued Louise and a few other mothers for defamation, which was thrown out, I guess, due to a technicality. So that was kind of, Louise and Paula were in and out of this throughout the whole documentary. So that is kind of their story. So I'm going to go on to talk about a couple of other folks. So there was Keely and Colby. They were used as the face of Twin Flame Union because back in the day, they were the only people who was in a harmonious twin flame union, so to speak. So, and by the way, so Jeff and Shaleia, it first started out that they were the only people who could tell someone who was their twin flame. Yeah. So I guess Jeff and Shaleia are, God talks to them, or their crystals talk to them, or, that's, Shaleia did say that. She's like, my crystals speak to me. Which is either some underlying issue or a grift. So you can decide on that. But so Keely and Colby were like the poster child for Twin Flames Union because they initially were like the only successful couple. And Jeff had claimed that he knew that they were twin flames. So Keely, here's the thing. She comes to this group After they break up, Keely and Colby break up, her world was rocked. She moved back to Massachusetts to seek answers. She Googled twin flame couples, and this is how she found Jeff and Shaleia. Okay, this is going to start to sound like a familiar thing. She said Jeff and Shaleia had all the answers, and she loved the big community. Classes cost $222 a month, which she didn't have, but it came with a promise and a guarantee. That's right, a guarantee that led her to continue despite financial restraints. So here's what the guarantee. Jeff and Shaleia guaranteed that you would find your twin flame. You would be in a harmonious twin flame union if you took all their classes. Isn't that convenient? And of course, they had no sliding scale based on income or anything like that. So the thing is that if someone is really trying to help somebody and someone is financially struggling, there should be avenues or ways to get around that. So as a therapist, if someone can't afford therapy, there are sliding scales that you can use based on income to adjust what they pay. Certainly Jeff and Shaleia did not, they did not abide by that. So Jeff claims that Colby was her twin flame. And so he said, you need to reach out to Colby. She did. And Jeff said that they had a spiritual power and were the only ones who could confirm the twin flame union. So he confirms this twin flame union. And based on literally what Jeff says about this twin flame union, she moves across the country from Massachusetts to Oregon and moves in with Colby. She says their job was to share their love story and highlight Twin Flames Union business on social media. Jeff and Shaleia start a GoFundMe campaign because Keely and Colby were the product of the work. And by the way, you're going to keep hearing this term, the work. The work is a nonsense term that is used by people who don't know what they're talking about, who just want to make it sound like something, but it's nothing. It's just this amorphous, it doesn't really mean anything. Anyway, but what's interesting is, so Keely and Colby, they did a GoFundMe for them, but Keely said that they were told exactly how to spend the money, like down to the curtains. So if someone is doing something nice for you, or they say that they're doing something nice for you, but it comes with strings, that's not help, that's manipulation. Okay? Let me be real clear about that. So they were made coaches, and they received $60 per session. And then initially, all the coaches got to keep the money. And then, of course, that changed. And then Jeff and Shaleia started taking 50%. Jeff and Shaleia flew Keely and Colby to the Twin Flame Ascension get-togethers. And so because they needed these two people to be the poster children for the Twin Flames harmonious union. And what really was happening is they saw an opportunity to gain power, control, and validation and make money off them, and they pounced. And that's what they did. It's getting a little dark in here. So Keely and Colby get engaged after 2 months, and she says, the community was counting on me. If we didn't get married, we are failing ourselves and our community who gave us money and have been invested in our success. Again, this is all manipulation and control tactics, because now she felt obligated. And, no, if someone gives you money or gives you a gift, you're not obligated to them. And if they say that you are, that's manipulation. So also something really wild is that Keely was the one who she claims that Jeff said to her, you are the CEO in face only, and you need to find us a way to pay less taxes. And then she helped them turn it into a church. Here's what's wild. So after cracks started to form, so for all these members who left, they talked about how they got out and how these cracks started to form. She was told to watch Nexium and The Vow and write an essay about how Jeff is not a cult leader. That is so crazy. That is so crazy. So he's like, watch these other cult shows and write an essay about how I'm not a cult leader. And here is what is so hilarious. Through watching that, that is how she started to realize that he probably was a cult leader. And I was like, oh my gosh. So it's like Jeff doesn't even seem particularly bright. That wasn't a good idea. But I mean, it was for Keely because it helped get her out. It helped, her extricate herself from this insanity. So the other thing about Keely is she had a sister, Marley, who unfortunately she got Marley sucked into this as well when Marley was 18 years old. And so Marley and Keely, here's another theme that you're going to see is a lot of these people who were searching for answers, they had traumatic childhood, so a lot of trauma and things like that. So Marley and Keely had, their mother was abusive, their father wasn't around. And so when she was 18, Keely was in this, and Keely literally thought, this is the greatest thing, let me get you in. And what started happening was Jeff and Shaleia told Marley that her twin flame was this random dude that messaged her. Jeff pushed her, and I watched this, by the way. They showed a video of Jeff pestering Marley about some guy who messaged her, and then Jeff, it was in one of these like twin flame like live meetups. He literally says to her, he's your twin flame, and that's it. So I decree. He is your twin flame, so I decree. And she looks so uncomfortable. She starts crying, and he forces this girl to just say, yes, okay, fine, he's my twin flame. Marley said, I did not even like this person. He was creepy. She was pressured into saying this random guy that she didn't even like. She was pressured to move in with him, and she felt she didn't have a choice. We always have a choice, folks. And if there's something in your gut that's telling you it's not right, please walk in the other direction, or at least talk to somebody about it. Because it's not okay. So the thing about this is that they paired her up with a gentleman who had schizoaffective disorder. For those of you who don't know, schizoaffective disorder, it's like schizophrenia, but also difficulty. It's so hard to explain. It's difficulty like understanding cues, and it's like a kind of like a personality and like a mental health complicated issue all in one. And he also had drug and alcohol issues, which so many folks who do experience psychosis self-medicate with drugs and alcohol. It's very, very common if they're not being medically treated, of course. And of course, he had legal issues. He had criminal record because, people with untreated mental health issues, they do find themselves in some trouble sometimes. So, Marley says this was not a harmonious union. He was 11 years older. He had no job, criminal record, mental health problems. I had to say that I love him, and I didn't. And one thing that Jeff said, and I watched it and I heard it, was, this is your opportunity to prove the validity of our work. Well, if you need somebody else to prove that you're valid or your work is valid, that's a real red flag. That's a real problem. I'm just going to say that. So eventually, Keely, Colby, and Marley fled. They fled Utah, and they fled the twin flame universe. And Keely and Colby ended up getting divorced. And as a result, Marley and Keely don't speak any longer because they both suffered a lot of trauma. And Keely, the hardest thing about her was she realized that she became a perpetrator. And the thing that all cults will do is, as a power and control mechanism, they will take their followers and they will force them to become perpetrators, because it's then you're less likely to think what you're doing is wrong, what's happening is wrong, if you're a part of it. It's like a psychological concept. You're not going to be as likely to say this is a problem because now you're perpetrating the abuse. And so because Keely was used by Jeff and Shaleia to perpetrate abuse, now she and her sister have no relationship, which is just absolutely incredibly sad. there were a couple of other previous members who interviewed. One was Shanice, Arcelia, Arcelia. She was a member who was in both documentaries. And the reason her participation was important is she is a trans woman. And she realized that Jeff and Shaleia were using her to be the LGBTQIA plus poster child. And when Jeff and Shaleia started doing things like forced transitioning, which I am going to talk about, as a trans woman, she is like, this is heteronormative bullshit, and I am out, which thankfully she got out. So Sarah, a previous member, Stephanie was her coach. I talked about her before, but one of the really important things there that she talked about is she said that Jeff and Shaleia said that if your family members were not supporting you on your twin flame journey, it was quote unquote an energy leak, another nonsense term, meaning it was leaking your life force away. And in order to be with your twin flame, you had to plug that leak. So this is just fancy nonsense language to get your members alienated from their family so you can pounce on them. That's essentially what that is. Another member, Victoria, she talked about, so she talked about how one of Jeff and Shaleia's only moves, like only actual exercises that they had people do, and this is how they got control of people. It was called the mirror exercise. Let's see here. So the mirror exercise in Jeff and Shaleia's world, it was where you have to identify the upset. Okay. Change all the nouns and pronouns to point to yourself and then love yourself. That's nonsense. That is absolute freaking nonsense. So essentially what this would be like is Bob is upset with me. And then you would, okay, well now you have to mirror that. I am upset with me and I need to love myself. That's essentially what it is. And that's gaslighting, because the fact of the matter is, if I just love myself more, they were teaching people, if you love yourself more, then your twin flame will love you more. And everything can be solved by inner work. Everything, medical issues, relationship issues, employment issues, spiritual issues, everything can be solved by this inner work, which is complete crap. And it's gaslighting, because here's the thing. We lack control. Let me be really clear. We can only control ourselves. We can control how we feel, how we react, and how we behave. And not even we can't control how we feel, but when we feel something, we can control what we do with that. So this is just like gaslighting at its finest. It's blaming those who are struggling for not working hard enough or trying hard enough. And they're the reason that they're failing, right? So this is part of getting people breaking down their self to get them to stay in this group. So what Victoria talked about was, I spent a lot of my life feeling I was to blame for a lot of my issues already. So when she started doing the mirror exercise, she believed she was doing something good for herself. But in reality, the mirror exercise is meant to tear apart yourself, to tear apart your sense of self, to tear apart your individuality and autonomy. That is really what it is doing. Victoria was told to keep an eye on members who were excommunicated, and files were kept about what these members who left were doing. She was a watchdog to protect the community, which there were 310 names on that list, by the way. When members left, you could not speak to members. And this reminds me of Scientology. I forget what they call it, but it's like, when someone leaves Scientology, you're not like allowed to talk to them anymore. There's a term for it. I just can't remember what it is. I'm blanking. And, that's also a huge red flag. If you're like in a group, but like if you leave, it's like, well, you're done. That's super sick and unhealthy. Sarah Berman was an investigative journalist. She is one of the journalists who participated in this documentary, but she also wrote one of the articles that I told you about. She told the story of Elle and another woman, Lene, after they left the group. She interviewed the mothers of the folks who some were still in the group, including Stephanie's mom. And after the article came out, Jeff, this is what he said. After the article came out, he defamed Sarah. He said, little old Sarah with her crappy career. Sorry, do something more meaningful. The thing that makes me mad about people like Jeff and Mary Cosby, it's like, you're going to claim to be a spiritual being, but you're going to be the shittiest human being on earth. That does not jive. Okay. So when you say one thing and your behaviors don't match, that's manipulation. And it is the grossest form of manipulation, in my opinion. So Elle was another member who, she was part of the investigative journalism story. She met a guy at Burning Man, moved to the Bay Area after feeling an intense connection with him. She was in a car accident in 2017. She had a spinal injury. She was literally broken emotionally and physically. She was lost, and the boyfriend broke up with her. So she started looking at twin flame, right? She started checking that out and found twin flame unions. Jeff literally, again, this is video footage that I am watching with my own eyes. He encouraged her to stalk her ex to the point where he filed a restraining order. She continually broke it per Jeff, and she ended up in jail for a month. She was coached to cut off her mom because they said that her mom was demonic and evil. Yikes. Eventually, after she was in jail for a month, she finally broke down and called her mom. And of course, her parents are wonderful people. They used their retirement savings to get her out of jail. She lived with them and they supported her despite this. That is unconditional love. Okay. Let me be real clear. If someone is saying, I love you, but only under these conditions, okay, that is conditional love. Unconditional love is you haven't talked to me. You have said that I'm demonic and whatever, but you're my child and I love you. And that is ultimately the best kind of love that we can get. And what's frustrating is a lot of these folks, they were so brainwashed that they didn't realize that they were getting conditional love when all they wanted was unconditional, and they already had that in their family. So that's kind of, that was the real problem there. So let's see, what else did she report? So Jeff said that discipline would solve her problem, and then talked about disciplining his dog in relation to Elle. And they knew that the ex filed a restraining order, and they said there's only one twin flame and you must make this work. The restraining order isn't real and doesn't exist. Boundaries aren't real. Heal yourself, heal your relationship. That is literally what they said. That is insanity. That is stalking. That is not encouraging. That's telling someone, stalk this person at all costs, even though they're telling you, I'm not your twin flame. I'm not interested. You are harassing me. I mean, wild. And then there was another woman, Angie, who, she identified as a cisgender female, bisexual. She met a man, became overcome with intense emotions, and she was looking at, what is this? Okay, so now we're seeing this theme. Okay, people are looking for answers. They're seekers, and they're coming across this twin flame stuff. So initially, and this was one of the ladies who has been through the most, with these people, is that when this man who she was attracted to, he rejected her, which never feels good, right? Jeff encouraged her to be a honey badger and pursue him by any means necessary. Then in 2020, so Jeff and Shaleia initially were telling people who their twin flame was. But in 2020, they started doing this thing where what did they call it? Here it is. So December 2019, Jeff and Shaleia channeled 20 new twin flame pairings. So before it was like, oh, we just know if someone's your twin flame and they're not necessarily in the community. And then all of a sudden in 2019, they channeled 20 new twin flame pairings. And instead of, they just used all the women in the group, because the group was 80 to 90% women, right? And so people were getting frustrated about not finding their twin flame. So then Jeff and Shaleia claim that they divined these new twin flame pairings. And here is where this gets really gross. They started to assign the members a gender identity based on divine feminine or divine masculine. And I'm going to describe what that means. So divine masculine and feminine is Jeff and Shaleia, according to them, you're either one or the other and you can't be both. This is bonkers. This is bananas. Because here's, as someone who's actually trained in this field, just have to put that out there, as someone who's actually trained, this is bullshit. This is heteronormative bullshit, that you're either a man or a woman. The fact of the matter is that sexual orientation, which by the way is different from gender identity and expression, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute, they exist on a spectrum, and it's not black and white. And anyone who's telling you it's black and white, it's nonsense. Okay. So Jeff and Shaleia claim that you're either one or the other. So now they start to match up these women who previously identified as cisgender females. He starts saying that you're divine masculine and you're with this divine feminine. But if you're a divine masculine, you also now have to transition. Right. I'm sincerely speechless about that. So essentially, this turned into, coercion, saying that these people, well, you're not, we know. So Jeff and Shaleia were claiming, not only do I know who your twin flame is, but I know who you are inside. And this is the crux of the bullshit, which is just that if anyone is trying to tell you that they know better about you than you, run away. You have a very big problem, because that is nonsense. So also, Jeff said homosexuality doesn't even really exist, which is insanity. It's just like, he's just someone who, he just says things and people are just like, okay. So that is his view on homosexuality, that it doesn't even really exist. And so he asked members to engage in just like this heteronormative, like when people are gay and they're in a relationship, you don't have to fulfill masculine and feminine roles. That's insanity. And Jeff literally said, and I quote, if you are a divine masculine, you're a man, you're a dude. So he not only, so let's remember. So Jeff is God or Jesus. He knows who your twin flame is. And now he also knows your sexual orientation and your gender identity better than you. Okay, let's just be real clear about that. Also, he used this whole process to, he said there's this twin flame sex thing, and it's an ascension tool to heal blocks. So he literally used this to encourage marital rape, which is horrifying. He said that you and your twin flame should be having sex all the time. If you're not, that's a problem. And that is absolutely false. Here's what I will tell you. All couples who have been together for long periods of time will go through periods of lack of sex in their relationship or their marriage. Things happen when you have a baby, if you have a health issue, if you're not feeling well, whatever it is, difficulties in the relationship. So he encouraged men or the men and the women, And then, eventually when he started pairing the women, it's if the male counterpart wants sex, then you need to give them sex, and it's not an option to say no. That is rape. And that's just it. So this man literally was encouraging marital rape. And Jeff and Shaleia told each male member that their feminine flame should provide them as much sex as they want. And if they don't, they need to heal their wound. Oh my God. Absolutely ridiculous. Oh, and here's Jeff's thought on mental illness, by the way. So remember I talked about Keely and Marley, and how Marley, her twin flame, was the gentleman with the schizoaffective disorder. When Marley was talking about her twin flame having these psychotic episodes, Jeff said, if he had a happy, supportive, loving environment that was consistent, he could work through this. Yep, that's right. So women, right? So the whole thing of this twin flames, it's so misogynistic. It's that women, if you were just better, Marley, your husband wouldn't be mentally ill, which is gaslighting, manipulation, insanity. I mean, it's all the things. Jeff said, God sets the price. God created the person. You have to accept this is what you have to work with. And in reality, when he was in his psychotic episodes, he was committing domestic violence. So, he told her that she just needed to ground and do the work. Ground and do the work. Yep, because you're responsible for someone else's mental health. That is insanity. And then the really sad and awful thing that happened that really frustrated me is that there was a young woman in the Facebook group. She posted about depression. She asked for mental health help. She was told to do the mirror exercise and the MAP session. Because medical and mental issues can all be resolved with these nonsense, exercises. And she ended her life. And in my opinion, I think Jeff and Shaleia should be charged with murder. Because if someone is reaching out for mental health help and you're telling them that you're not doing enough work and you just need to do this, this, and this, they are responsible. They are responsible, and they should be held responsible. There have been some police investigations into this, by the way, which I'm going to talk about in just a minute. Absolutely unbelievable. So essentially, they get these people to decide that now that they're getting paired, that they need to change their sexual orientation, gender identity, etc. So let me be clear about a couple of terms. So sex refers to biology, male or female assigned at birth based on genitalia and chromosomes we are born with. Now, even sex isn't black and white, because there's a term called intersex, which is used to describe situations where a person might be born with reproductive or sexual anatomy that doesn't fit male or female. Like an old outdated term for this was hermaphrodite. But so the point is that even sex is not black and white. Gender refers to the socially constructed roles, behaviors, expressions, and identities. It is influenced by social, cultural, and personal experience. So cisgender is when someone identifies in a way that corresponds to how they were born. So I identify as a cisgender female. I was born female. I identify as cisgender. Gender dysphoria is a sense of unease due to mismatch. So if you're born with female genitalia, but you feel like you're not a woman, that creates a dysphoria around your gender identity. That creates depression and sadness. It create mental health issues. And all of this stuff that happens, it's due to epigenetics. It is genes and environment. Gender identity is how you feel inside. Okay. How you express gender through physical appearance and behaviors. We're born this way, essentially, as Gaga said. Lady Gaga, love that song, Born This Way. Okay. So just to be clear on those issues. So what Jeff and Shaleia started doing was taking members and encouraging them to transition. And some of them did. And some of them went through top surgery, and some of them, it took hormones, and all these things based on what Jeff and Shaleia told them they were. And so this is why this topic gets really tricky, because transgender folks are so misunderstood and so, I feel, misrepresented, that people are going to look at this and say, well, see, being trans isn't, whatever critics of this will say. But it's so important to me to have people understand that in a cult, your sense of self and identification can become so twisted that you can literally change everything about yourself based on what these people are saying. Okay, so let me look here, because we're at an hour and a half already. My God. Okay, let me talk a little bit about Alice Hines for a minute. She was the journalist from Vanity Fair who interviewed former members and highlighted the abuses. So she was interviewed for the Amazon show, and she was on the podcast about the twin flames. She was on one of the podcasts. So here's what was really interesting about Alice Hines. She contacted Jeff and Shaleia and she interviewed them. In 2020, during the teeth of the pandemic, she went to their home in Michigan, and we saw the whole thing. On the documentary. They showed off their house. They showed off their pool. They just bragged about Porsches and this and that. And, here's what's ironic. They didn't even have a lot of furniture because they were just spending all their money as they got it. So they had this great house and they had this great car, but folding chairs inside. And he's like, oh, we're still working on decorating. And it's like, oh, you mean you're still working on stealing money from people and manipulating them? And that's really what you mean. Well, he didn't steal money. I'm going to say that. He manipulated people into giving it away, but that's still terrible. This is where Shaleia, so they bought like $20,000 worth of these giant crystals, and she said that one crystal is masculine and one is feminine, of course. I do not understand what Jeff and Shaleia's obsession with male and female is. Like, I don't get that. That is definitely something that's very interesting to me, why they are so obsessed with that. And she said that the crystal sends her messages from the other side. Ugh, okay. Alice acknowledged that she admitted that Jeff is very disarming. And she said that if you're insecure or unsure of yourself, she totally understands how it could lead to manipulation. When she went to their house, she found students living in their basement. And one of the people living in their basement was one of the gentlemen who was coerced into transitioning, and paired with a woman who was a cisgender female, but she identified as straight. But, Jeff and Shaleia said, this is what you're doing. So this is what she did. Now, she eventually, Brianna, her mother and her aunts participated in this documentary. And what I'm happy to report is that she is now home safely, recovering, and her family went to every length to get her out. And when she reached out to them and she said, I need to come home. And they said, come on, welcome you with open arms. And so now she is home processing all of this trauma that she was exposed to. So the other interesting thing about this, when you see Alice Hines go to their house, she confronted Jeff and Shaleia about, she said, I interviewed several members who were pressured to change their gender identity. Oh, and their pronouns, of course. Per the coaches and Jeff and Shaleia. And some of the previous members, by the way, who were out, they all confirm this. And I can tell you something is that if one person's saying something, that's fine. But if 40 people are saying it, that's, of course, Jeff and Shaleia were like, Jeff gets angry and he says, oh, you're being misled, Alice. And Jeff says, I'm not evil. That's not the truth if someone looks carefully. So here's the thing. Jeff, I hope he listens to this, by the way. I hope he really does. He's never going to say, yep, you know what? I know I'm not doing the right thing. Like, no cult leader is ever going to be like, yeah, you know what? You're right. I really should look at that. No, that's not how it's going to go. And after the article, Jeff sent this email and like pages long and published a 7,000 word article trashing Alice and the media, and he claimed to be deceived. Oh, give me a break. And, I don't know about you, but if someone says something about me that's not true, I publish 7,000 word essays about how it's not true. That's just, yuck. Okay. Oh, let me talk about, so William Plant was Shaleia's father. He claims that she is a willing participant and plays victim well, that she's complicit. And he says, I've seen numerous examples of how manipulative she was in the family. He got a letter 4 years ago that he said was, quote, a diatribe of hatred. He said, I treat her like she's dead because I can't live with what she's doing. And he acknowledged the victims. So, okay. So moving on to other members. So there was the most significant, I mentioned Brianna before, her mother, Lynn, and her aunts, rock stars. If you're listening to this, please reach out. You all are amazing. Katrina and Anne, there was some really egregious stuff here that, so Katrina and Anne, they're both cisgender female and they were gay and they didn't want to come out. They ended up in hetero relationships. And when they found Twin Flames, Jeff told them that they were Twin Flames and wanted them to help build the coaching program. He used them to start the coaching program, MLM format. And so Jeff eventually pressured Anne to transition to become a male and to change her name to Dan. Jeff yells at her, again, this is all in the documentary, I say you're a man inside. I know a pissed off man when I see one, and it's you. Yep, that's right. Jeff said, why would you keep a name that's so obviously feminine? Anne said, I would consider that name. Jeff said, boom, there. Thanks, Anne, the man, and Katrina. Does that sound like a really wise, spiritual being to you? That is insanity. And so when they both, of course, they were both uncomfortable because Anne identified as a woman and not a man. And once they stopped complying, Jeff sent verbally abusive texts, which were pictured, by the way, in the episode. I saw them with my own eyes, and they were verbally abusive. When they didn't comply and submit, he blocked them and cut them out of the community. He shut their business down overnight. And eventually, here's what I'm happy to report. Katrina and Anne eventually got married and found their happiness, which is miraculous, because to come out of this and to have been so mind controlled and to come out of this and still be able to be happy with each other and like find your light. I mean, bravo, bravo, bravo. Okay. Oh, and in the second and first documentaries had professionals, like historians of sexuality and gender, that I felt were really, really important, because we need people from the LGBTQIA plus community to talk about, they are the experts of the experience. I'm not an expert, I'm trained, but they are experts in the experience. One thing I will tell you that I loved is that episode 3 on the Netflix or on the Prime documentary, they did give a warning, and I wish Netflix had done that. They did give a trigger warning that said the following episode examines topics of gender identity and transition, because for folks who have trauma around it, which a lot do, I just like that they gave a warning. I don't understand what the problem is with trigger warnings. Like, it allows people to like make their own decisions about the content they want to take in. I just don't understand what people have against them. So let me be clear. The Twin Flames universe, at first it was based on self-growth and fulfillment. Then it was leading to finding love and loving ourselves, which is honestly a good message. We do need to love ourselves but we don't have to love ourselves first before we can find someone, but we do always have to focus on loving ourselves. So initially, the Twin Flames, it worked well for people, but then they realized they couldn't sustain them, because if people were happy doing what they were doing, then they would leave. So when people get well, they're like, well, we need people sick. So then it morphed into, we are the divine rulers and we who know who your twin flame is. Then it morphed into matchmaking after people got restless about not finding their twin flame. Then it morphed into one-on-one coaching, and having people pay to become a master certified ascension coach, using members to market, recruit, and make more money. Community grew quickly, of course, because to be clear, these people, they believed in this. They believed in the mission and they thought that they were doing good. Jeff asked members to volunteer and work hard for no money. The entire hierarchy worked for free, giving, and that, so here's one question about why. Because it gave members who felt unseen, it gave them a purpose and it gave them status. And that can, some people can get drunk with power with that. And there was a quote that Jeff said, if you cannot uphold your position, get the fuck out of it because we are going to bulldoze you over. Yeah, that's a real spiritual leader for you. Sure. He brags continuously about materialism, houses, Porsches, lifestyles of the rich and famous. More money equaled more control. And I think this made them feel desperate to lose their lifestyle. Once you got a taste of the good stuff, they were like, we can't go back to this. We can't go back to living like regular people. Oh, we can't. So yeah, this eventually turned into, because 80% of the group was women, due to the lack of males, assigning masculine and feminine roles, manipulating folks into changing their gender identity, pronouns, sexual orientation, and encouraged transitioning based on what Jeff and Shaleia told them. They claimed that they got the messages from God. Sure you did. And then they claimed, and again, they claimed that Jeff was the second coming of Christ, and they began calling him Master Christ. Okay, so here's the thing. I have more stuff about some of the other people, but I got to move on to the cult stuff because this is crazy town. How long this episode is. So so I have given the best synthesized assessment and observation of this that I can. So I'm going to talk about different types of cults. Why do people join them and all this stuff? Okay. So one type of cult is a doomsday cult. And this is like the best example of this is the Branch Davidians, who famously stockpiled firearms and explosives. I'm so sorry. I've been talking for so long, I'm getting tongue-tied. In Waco, Texas, and in the 80s and 90s to prepare for the apocalypse. And it led to an infamous standoff with the federal government. It was awful. So many people died. Then there's religious cults. So spiritual beliefs serve as a bedrock for many cults. Some cults are offshoots of mainline religions, while others offer brand new dogmas and theology. And I feel like spiritual cults come from people not wanting mainstream religion, which is fine. But that's how it opens up people who say that they're spiritual and are seekers and are looking for stuff. That's kind of how that goes. So the best examples of religious cults are, Heaven's Gate, 39 people died, Scientology, the Manson family. And then there are sex cults that are all types of cults have a component of sexual abuse. And so when I talked in the beginning about how twin flame universe, there is sexual abuse going on, because if you were essentially trying to convert, so conversion therapy is an old school, discredited technique that people have used to try to convert someone to experience a different sexual orientation. And it's harmful, it's abusive, it's insanity. And essentially, Twin Flame Universe was using a form of conversion therapy, coercion as conversion, sincerely. So that is why I talked about the sexual abuse component of this. And of course, the sexual abuse component of what he told men about sex and all that other stuff. So all types of cults have a component of sexual abuse, but some focus on sex as one of their primary functions. So the best example of this is the NXIVM cult, there's a ton of stuff on NXIVM on Netflix and things like that. And this one in particular just encouraged rampant sexual abuse and group members and things like that. Now, according to Cult Education Institute, there are specific warning signs to look out for when considering whether a group might be a cult. So here are 10 factors that cults are characterized by. And I want you all to listen as I say this and see what we think about the Twin Flames universe. Okay. Number 1, absolute authoritarianism without accountability. Check. Twin Flames, check. Zero tolerance for criticism or questions. Ooh, double check. Jeff, when people would question him, he'd be like, you don't know more than God, meaning me. You don't know more than God, and how dare you question me? If you have a relationship with someone and you have a feeling or a question of something and you can't say that without being gaslit, that's a problem. Okay. Number 3, lack of meaningful financial disclosure regarding budget. Check and check. Jeff once bragged in a video about how there was a woman who was living with her mother and her child sleeping on an air mattress on the floor, and she still gave me $4,000. So all you idiots, all you lazy idiots, yes, that's what he said, you can certainly afford to pay me. What kind of spiritual leader is that you want someone giving you money at the cost of being homeless and not having anywhere to sleep with their child? Wow, that's really spiritual, bro. Okay. Number 4, unreasonable fears about the outside world that often involve evil conspiracies and persecution. Check. This whole nonsense term about the spirit family or whatever, that's what that is. Number 5, a belief that former followers are always wrong for leaving and there is never a legitimate reason for anyone else to leave. Check and check. Hence the 310 person list of people who were excommunicated. And if you don't care about them, I'm not sure why you're stalking their life, but okay. 6, abusive members. Check, check, check. Religious abuse, spiritual abuse, financial abuse. By the way, financial abuse is very real. Sexual abuse, verbal, emotional. I mean, all abuse. Check. Records, books, articles, or programs documenting the abuses of the leader or the group. This is my favorite because there are so many recordings that document the abuses, and this is not. It's not unique to Twin Flames. All of these cult members believe, because out of narcissism, that I am so great, what I'm doing is so amazing that I can tape these abuses and no one will say anything about it. And even if someone does say something about it, I'll just deny it. It's so narcissistic. So that's a check. 8, followers feeling they are never able to be good enough. Check, check, and check. Lots of them talked about that. I felt like I couldn't do anything right. I was never good enough. That's a tactic to get you dependent upon them. 9, a belief that the leader is right at all times. Check. And a belief that the leader is the exclusive means of knowing the truth or giving validation. Check, check, and check. Here's a fact. Nobody knows it all. Even the smartest, most educated people will tell you if you're doing things right, you don't know everything and you're always learning and growing. That is the fact. Anyone who says otherwise is just trying to manipulate you. Okay, so let's talk about the why, okay? People join cults for so many reasons, but the main reason, and what we heard through these victims, was they were all had a desire for meaning. They were all seekers. They had all experienced something that they were seeking for meaning, or they had like a major life event or trauma, and they were just seekers and looking for meaning. So many who become parts of, who join cults and get stuck have trauma in their background, because truly when you have trauma and you have a history of abuse, you're going to be more likely to tolerate this type of behavior because it's what you are used to. And our brains, here's the thing, trauma changes our brain. Literally. So we have neural pathways that are deep because of trauma, and it takes actively changing those to kind of get out of that. But if people are seeking and they're not healed and they're seeking help from the wrong people, that's how people get sucked into cults. Former cult members often describe like a sense of loneliness and like a sense of like just lack of, meaning in the world prior to becoming part of the group. So the other answer to why people join cults and how people got sucked into this is that everyone was spiritual with an open mind and a desire for growth and happiness. But the biggest thing is everyone was in pain and feeling really isolated and feeling confused, vulnerable, looking for love and meaning, and they were desperate for a better life. There was something that was said in the documentary that feeling of loneliness is a pandemic. And I feel that, unfortunately, that's true, number one. And number two, after the pandemic, I think their numbers grew and grew and grew because the pandemic for people, especially even me, it created this sense of loneliness and isolation. And that's why people seek out religion and spirituality. They're looking for a community. And the one thing that Jeff and Shaleia provide is a huge community of people. And although they, I believe, are their behaviors are predatory, there are good people in the community. And so they use those good people to get other good people sucked in. And then they're like, imagine how hard that would be if you're in a community and then all of a sudden you're like, I'm not sure if this is good, but you're going to lose your whole world. You're going to lose your job. You're going to lose your community. You're going to lose your friends. You're going to lose everything you have worked for and known. I don't know many people who would be like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to blow up my whole life and I'm going to take this somewhere else. That is a hard process to get out of. So they know what they're doing when they're integrating these people into the community. They know what they're doing. So other people vouch for the process. They use coercion, spiritual manipulation, and humor. Jeff used a lot of humor to say crazy shit to maintain power and control. And the other thing that Jeff and Shaleia do is love bombing. Love bombing can be done outside of romantic relationships. So early in videos, they would just love bomb these clients or these people or these followers or whatever they called them. And then after that, that is when the abuse started. And the other thing that I notice like sometimes spiritual people or groups will do is they use like nonsense terms to get people like really integrated. So once people weren't finding their twin flame, or Jeff said, this is your twin flame, but then it clearly didn't work out. Then they pivoted. And that's another thing to look for in cults. Do the rules that are finite, like one day, and then the next day, all of a sudden, oh, wait, God talked to me and they're different now. That's always a sign of manipulation. So they claim that there was a false twin flame experience. After people started getting antsy about not finding their twin flame, they changed the rules and then the twin flame had to be in the group, blah, blah, blah. And so again, the mirror exercise is the main method of exploitation that they used. Now, here's the thing. We must always identify our role in things, but the twin flame universe tells people that you are responsible for other people's behaviors, and that is absolutely not true. We are never responsible for somebody else's behavior. Never. No, not. Nope. Oh, and the other nonsense term that they used was soul family. And so this was used to alienate people from their family, and that your twin flame is your only lover. And that's the other thing. It's like people can have close relationships, people that they love multiple times throughout their lives. To tell people that there's only one, and if you like, that creates desperation, right? So it's like, well, you only have this one person and you better go get them. Like they created that frenzy for people that like, if this person doesn't love you, like, well, you don't have your twin flame. That is insanity. So here's the fact of the matter. The idea that there's only one person for us forever is absurd. As I said, monogamy is not for everybody, and our brains are tricky. We can have feelings for people who aren't good for us. How many people has that happened to? Or we can fall in love in a relationship can just be unsustainable. Sometimes love is not enough. So I cannot state this enough that concept is insanity. Anyone who claims to know it all is lying. Reframed domestic violence as divine masculinity, or reframing sexual abuse as a divine masculinity or whatever, that's abuse. That's insane. Gender identity, expression, and sexual orientation exist on a spectrum. None of these concepts are black or white, and no one other than you knows. Please remember that no one other than you knows. Even folks who come to therapy to explore gender identity, which I've worked with many folks, I am not telling them. I am guiding them. I am helping them sift through their thoughts and and sharing observations. I am not the one directing it. Okay. Relationships cannot always be harmonious. Like I said, conflict is a necessary part. And here's the thing with cults, and why I'm concerned about this, and why maybe I'll continue to talk about this, is that the world is a scary place right now. I think we can all agree on that. The world is scary. There's a lot of wars and fighting and lots of scary stuff. Okay. And when people feel the world is scary, they are vulnerable. And when that happens, people turn to religion and spirituality. So this group, mark my words, will continue to grow until these people are taken down and made to be held accountable. Period. And the hours of video, how do I know this is true? The hours of video that Jeff and Shaleia taped themselves, recorded. Like, it's out there for anyone to observe. So, and here's the other thing with cults. People don't speak up or out because of fear of rejection. There's something called communication apprehension, which is like, if you know that you're going to be evaluated based on every little thing that you say, you're going to be apprehensive to communicate, but you're also probably going to tell people what they want to hear. And there's something called groupthink, which is essentially using a group thought pattern to make decisions without critical reasoning, evaluation of consequences, exploring other alternatives. And it's meant to decrease creativity and to decrease individual responsibility. So a lot of times Jeff will say, well, I'm not saying this, right after he has said it. So there's a group think that happens in cults, and it is used to get people in the group to just like lack their own autonomy. Jeff told us who he is. Let me be clear. Jeff and Shaleia have told us who they are. So we need to listen. In 2020, police have investigated, and there's actually one of the last things that I'll share, if I can find it, is there was an officer that was questioning Jeff. It was featured in one of the documentaries, and it was so wild to listen to what he was saying. Let me see if I can find it. I have so many notes, it's so hard. Okay, well, I can't find it, but essentially it showed Jeff being interviewed by this officer, and Jeff was like, no, this is crazy. I'm not doing this. The reason why legally manipulating someone using these psychological tactics isn't against the law. I mean, it's not. So cults get away with stuff like this because there's not a lot of evidence. There's not a lot of, you can't catch them on a lot of stuff. So I just hope that through discussing this all today, I maybe have helped somebody. If you're in a group and any of this resonated with you, please listen to that. I believe that we all know what is best for us in our gut. It's, do we listen to that or not? And sometimes if we listen to that or not, it's determined by a lot of factors, including trauma and mental health issues and needing to belong and all of these things. So I got to wrap this up because this has been a 2-hour podcast and I am tired. So for now, this is going to be it for me. Season finale in the can of season 1 of your Bish Therapist podcast. I will be popping on to record some podcasts prior to the holidays to talk about how to cope and manage mental health and being around family and all those things. I will be back in January. I will be back with more amazing content, some professionals. Thank you so much for everyone who has gotten through this and listened to it and who has supported me. Please like, subscribe, and follow Your Bitch Therapist on Instagram, on YouTube, and anywhere you listen to podcasts. Please go ahead and follow me there. I hope you all have an amazing holiday, whatever it is you celebrate, Hanukkah, Christmas, Kwanzaa, whatever it is. I wish you all nothing but the best. I will miss you. I will take every minute I can to rest and take care of myself so that I can be back with a vengeance in January. Thank you all so very much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you in January. Disclaimer: posts are not intended to diagnose, treat, or provide medical advice. Your Bitch Therapist is for entertainment and informational purposes only. The podcast My Opinions posts are my own and are not associated with past or present employers, any organizations, Bravo TV, Greyheart Productions, or any other television network. The information on YBT Podcast and on its social media is provided for general informational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose or treat. Please do not act or refrain from acting based on anything you read, see, or hear on YBT Podcast or associated social media. Communicating with YBT via email and or social media does not form a therapeutic alliance. Melissa, operator of YBT, is unable to provide any therapeutic advice, treatment, or feedback.